In 2023, Lexus brought out the RZ 450e, an all-wheel drive electric SUV. But then in late 2024, they announced the 300e, a single motor configuration that had the same battery pack, therefore giving it slightly better electric range. And that's exactly what we have on review. Now, at the time of filming and in the UK, prices start from £50,000. That is for the 300e, and that extends up to £62,000. If, however, you go for the 450e, that starts from £55,000 and goes up to £67,000. There's also 4 different trims to choose from: the Urban, the Premium Plus, and the Takumi. Now, in this review, you can see if it's actually worth its price tag and, of course, how it compares to some of its key competitors. So to kick things off, let's talk about its electric range. And yes, indeed, both the models have got the same 71.4 kilowatt-hour battery pack. There's also a heat pump that comes included across the entire trim range, which is certainly appreciated because it adds to the overall efficiency when it comes to heating the cabin. Useful, for example, for those colder climate scenarios. Now, when it comes to the range claim, the RZ 300e goes up to 297 miles, that is with the 18-inch alloys fitted. If, however, you were to go for the 20-inch alloys, it drops the range claim by roughly 30 miles. Now, the RZ 450e, however, has got a range claim that goes up to 272 miles, and this again drops by roughly 20 miles if you were to add the 20-inch alloy. So yes, it's actually a bit intriguing that it drops by 30 miles in the 300e, but then only 20 miles in the 450e. Now, nonetheless, when it comes to my own test vehicle that I'm driving, it is the 300e with the 18-inch alloy, so technically I should be getting the best sort of range. But unfortunately, from my own mixed driving conditions, I netted a measly 160 to 180 miles, which is actually really surprising. And I say that because if you do look at the mileage leaderboard, you'll be able to quickly notice that the Subaru Solterra is also there. Now, for those who are not aware, the Subaru Solterra is effectively based on the Toyota BZ4X, which in itself is similar to the Lexus RZ line, more specifically the 450e. So theoretically, this should have done better than the Subaru Solterra, but unfortunately, that is not the case, at least by going by the range claim figures and the efficiency that I was able to see via the instrument cluster. That's not the case with the RZ 300e, which is on review. So I'm not going to give you any sort of misleading figures, but rather the fact that what I'm actually able to notice, and from my own actual experiences, that the vehicle itself was not that efficient, be it on driving on the country roads within the city, or furthermore on the motorway, where electric vehicles really do suffer. Now, what I do like, however, is the fact that you have got customization when it comes to regenerative braking. Now, behind the steering wheel, you have got these paddle shifters, and right now I'm rolling at roughly 30 miles an hour, and if I were to lift off the accelerator pedal, I'll continue coasting, and that's because I've got no regenerative braking set. Now, if I were to go on the harshest mode, you could be able to see that the vehicle starts decelerating pretty harshly. However, it is worth mentioning that the vehicle will not come to a complete standstill, so therefore you do not have that one pedal drive, which is quite a shame because some of its competitors do actually offer you that feature. Now, of course, you do also have the ability of plugging it in, and via its CCS port, it'll take up to 150 kilowatts of input. So therefore, if you do find an appropriate DC rapid charger, for example, on the motorway, you can go from 20 to 80% in a mere 25 minutes. Now, it does also have an 11 kilowatt onboard charger, so therefore benefiting from those people who are able to utilize a 3-phase power supply. And this means that you can go from 0 to 100% in 6.5 hours. If, however, you have a regular 7 kilowatt wall box like you'd find at home, it will take you 10 hours and 12 minutes to attain the same level of charge. Unsurprisingly, it will take you a lot longer if you're connecting it up to a regular 3-pin socket. So past efficiency, what about when it comes to performance? Well, the 300e has got a front-wheel drive configuration with its motor planted on the front axle, and combined with its battery pack, it dispatches 150 kilowatts of power, or 201 horsepower, and 266 newton meters of torque. It's claimed to go from 0 to 62 miles an hour in 8 seconds. Now, the 450e has got an all-wheel drive configuration thanks to 2 electric motors, one at the front and around the back, and they combine to output 230 kilowatts of power, or 309 horsepower, and 435 newton meters of torque. It's claimed to go from 0 to 62 miles an hour in just 5.3 seconds. Now, using RaceLogic's Performance Box Touch, I had the 300e tested from 0 to 20 miles an hour in 2.16 seconds, 0 to 30 miles an hour in 3.23 seconds, 0 to 60 miles an hour in 7.41 seconds, so yes indeed, it's a little bit faster than the manufacturer's claim, 50 to 70 miles an hour in 3.97 seconds, and a peak acceleration of 0.45 Gs. Now, aside from this, it is worth mentioning that both models have got the same top speed, which is rated at 99 miles an hour. Now, aside from its straight line performance, I'm actually really impressed by the overall handling characteristics of the RZ line. See, I've already put the 450e through its paces at a test track, and there it actually gripped the road really well, and that is due to the fact that it's using the all-wheel drive configuration and the direct force system that Lexus have developed. In other words, it intelligently shifts the power delivery at the front and rear axle, so it does some pretty smart stuff. But despite the fact that the RZ 300e is operating on a front wheel drive configuration, I still have plenty of confidence while hooning it around on winding country routes, and also I have a good sense of connection with the front axle. Now, make no mistake, both models don't exactly have the utmost driver's feel and won't compete with some of their key competitors, for example the likes of BMW and certain others, but nonetheless most consumers I think will be left pretty impressed. Now, furthermore, when it comes to the overall driving comfort, their vehicles themselves are actually really well tuned, so not only are you going to feel pretty planted on the ground when you're chucking around winding country routes, so therefore you're not going to suffer from too much body lean, but also when it comes to just simply pottering around town, they actually soak up quite a lot of the anomalies on the road. You're not exactly going to get that sort of seesawing effect in comparison to some cheaper alternatives. So yet again over here, kudos to Lexus with what they've been able to achieve with the platform. Now, I would also like to highlight over here that if you do go for the Takumi model, you will have a performance rod and front and rear dampers, and that is an upgrade over the standard configuration where you have got a McPherson strut setup at the front and a double wishbone setup at the rear. So just worth considering that if you do want the utmost comfort and that extra sense of performance, then you might want to go for the top spec model, because that really does up the ante. Now, another thing I quite like is its interior design. Yes, indeed, you might come to expect it within a Lexus, but it's still nice to see it present in this vehicle. The stitching work and the upholstery are very nice. The materials that have been used around the dashboard feel premium, and the same could be said about the materials that are being used even when it comes to the headliner and the steering wheel. Furthermore, it's good to see a nice sense of practicality with physical buttons that are found on the steering wheel. You've got traditional stalks and then a few buttons that are found towards the center console, including a pretty intuitive rotary gear selector. On that note, you've also got some climate controls which are still physical, and that is just for your temperature controls. I would have been nice to see a few customization options. For example, you could adjust the rotary dials like you'd find on some rival alternatives, but alas, that's not the case. As a result, means that if you do want to be changing the fan speed or certain other settings within the climate controls, then unfortunately you'll have to faff around with the infotainment system, and given the buttons are a little bit small and slightly hard to press, it means it can be a little bit awkward, specifically while you're on the move. This is a nonsensical recent trend which I don't really understand, but nonetheless it's just something I thought I should highlight in this review. Now, when it comes to the 14-inch landscape display, it's actually very responsive, intuitively laid out, and also supports Android Auto and Apple CarPlay. Although it's slightly surprising that the former is only supported over a wired connection, while the latter is also supported over a wireless connection. I'm not really sure why Android users are getting shafted over here with a Lexus, but nonetheless over here, it's still good to see that both systems are supported. Now, as for the instrument cluster, it is fully digitalized and somewhat customizable, although it has got that somewhat retro feel to it and doesn't quite fit the theme of the infotainment system. It reminds me of the second generation Nissan Leaf or even the Toyota Prius. So I feel that Lexus and Toyota could have done a little bit better here, but nonetheless it provides you all the key driving information that you require. If you want an extension to this, you might want to go for the Premium Plus or the Takumi models, because here you'll have a head-up display, further bolstering the overall safety credentials as it keeps your eyes planted on the road and still allows you to check, for example, your traversing speed or the safety systems that are actually in operation. Now on that note, in the top spec Takumi trim, you will find a 13-speaker Mark Levinson system that also has a Harman amplifier. This will give you undoubtedly a better audio reproduction, but even the stock 10-speaker audio system that is present in the other trims and what we actually have fitted in this vehicle is actually pretty impressive. If you want a detailed breakdown of the audio system, including some in-cabin measurements, do check out my dedicated audio review that can be found up on your pop-up banner or by following the links down in the description below or the pinned comments. So next up we get onto storage, and at the front there is no glove box. However, there's a small little compartment that resides underneath the center console that kind of serves as the glove box. Here you also find a 12-volt socket. Now at the top of the center console there is a wireless charger that's comes fitted as standard across the entire trim range, and you also find 3 USB Type-C ports, one of which is used to connect up to the infotainment system. Further down you've then got 2 cup holders, and then you've also got a 2-way opening center armrests, which I absolutely love, so therefore making it quite convenient for both the driver and the passenger. So good thinking by the manufacturer. Here you also find a pretty large area that is comprised within it, which has also been lined in fabric. Speaking of which, the door bins themselves have not been lined in fabric, which is slightly disappointing, therefore means that loose change and keys will be heard rattling about when you're traversing on uneven terrain. But here at the front you have got large enough door bins to accommodate a 500ml bottle alongside some small to medium sized valuables, while at the rear they're unsurprisingly a little bit more limited. You have also got a pull down armrest compartment which will reveal 2 cup holders. Then towards the rear portion of the center console you'll also find 2 USB Type-C ports which are used to provide charge for the rear occupants. Now, of course, when it comes to storage, we have to talk about its boot. And here you've got a pretty sizable 522 litres to play around with, or 1,451 litres if you drop down the seats. Sure enough, it's not going to compete with some of the larger sized electric SUVs, but for some of the alternatives out there on the market, it actually does do a pretty decent job, meaning that you can place luggage or indeed your weekly shops without any worry. It's also great to see that practicality has been thought about. You've got an electric opening hatchback design, 60/40 rear split folding seats and a flat loading bay, and even a smart foldable boot load cover which will fit in the underfloor compartment, which in itself is actually pretty large, allowing you to place your charging cables among a few other goods. It is worth noting, however, that despite being a fully electric vehicle, there is no frunk. In other words, a storage compartment underneath the bonnet where you'd normally find it because of electric vehicles doing away with any sort of engines. But alas, that's not the case with the RZ lineup. So moving on, let's talk about seat and comfort. And first off, in terms of the materials that have been used, you have got fabric within the Urban trim, then a synthetic leather within the Premium and Premium Plus, and then an ultra suede within the top spec Takumi trim, which certainly does look the part. Now, as for the seats themselves, at the front, they've got 8-way electronic controls with 2-way lumbar support. And if you want a driver memory function and a ventilation feature, then you'll have to go for the Premium Plus and the Takumi trim. All the trim levels have got heated front seats and a heated steering wheel, which is certainly appreciated. And similarly over here, you've got a panoramic roof. You've also got a dimmable panoramic roof within the Takumi trim, which does take things a step further. Now, as for the overall headroom and legroom at the rear of the cabin, it's actually pretty good. As someone who's just under 6 foot, I had no issues whatsoever. And it's also great to see that the manufacturer has optimized the rear footwell design, therefore meaning that even the rear middle occupant won't be left uncomfortable on those slightly longer journeys. Now, next up, I would like to talk about its exterior design, and looks are very subjective, so I'd be curious to know what you make of it down the comment section below. What I'll say subjectively is I do think the Lexus stands out in comparison to its sibling, the Toyota BZ4X, or even, for example, the likes of the Subaru Solterra, which have got a bit more of a striking exterior design, for example, with their kind of square or rectangular shaped wheel arches. Now, sure enough, the Lexus doesn't have body-coloured wheel arches or side skirts, which really would have upped the ante, but nonetheless over here they don't protrude too much and don't take away from the overall exterior look. At the front, you've got a nice robust design due to how the front has been designed with the headlights, while towards the side you've got 18 to 20-inch alloys that come fitted as standard depending on the trim level chosen, and you can also opt for a black 5-spoke 18-inch alloy instead for an additional £1,109. As for the rear, it does look pretty nice with the small little fins that are extending towards the top of the vehicle. And then you've got a bar that extends the entire width of the vehicle, and that serves as your daytime running lights and also your brake lights. So it just really does come together pretty well in the RZ lineup. Now, in terms of your paint finishes, you've got a metallic blue or black that come as standard. If, however, you want a special metallic paint, or more specifically a pearlescent finish, you'll have to splash out an additional £250 for the white, platinum, copper, or the pictured grey. Now, what is disappointing, however, is that you've only got 750 kilograms of towing capacity, be it for braked or unbraked trailers. And for an all-electric vehicle, that's actually pretty disappointing, specifically if you can compare and contrast it with some of its key competitors. Now, on the other hand, it's absolutely fantastic to see that it's got great safety credentials, and here it was tested by Euro NCAP and awarded the full 5 out of 5 stars, scoring 87% in the adult and child occupancy tests and 81% in the safety assist scores. Now, in terms of the driver assistance systems, you've got a plethora of them that come included as standard. Indeed, across the entire trim range, you'll find lane change assist and driver monitoring system, lane departure alert, blind spot monitoring system, front and rear cross traffic alert, pre-collision system, emergency steering assist, road sign recognition, dynamic radar cruise control with curve speed reduction and overtaking prevention, which is really nice addition, and that does work pretty well on the motorway by keeping you at a safe distance from the leading vehicle and not feeling jerky either. And then you've also got steering support with lane tracing assist, therefore giving you good sort of extra degree of assistance while you're on the motorway. Now, while all of these systems are certainly appreciated, it is slightly annoying that all of them do come re-enabled every single time you power on the vehicle. And the likes of, for example, the road sign recognition can be a little bit hit and miss. And, for example, the driver monitoring system is sometimes a little bit annoying, because if you have your hand placed at the 12 o'clock position, it will sometimes detect that the driver is not present and therefore start beeping at you, which I just do think is just a little bit of an oversight by the manufacturer. Nonetheless, if you do want to disable some of these systems, you'll have to go via the infotainment system and disable them every single time you power on the vehicle. Now, apart from all of this, I would also like to highlight that in the top spec Takumi trim, you will also have adaptive high beam support, which goes up from the regular high beam support that's present in the other trim levels. Now, on that note, the top spec model and the premium plus models have got a panoramic view and therefore giving you a 360-degree vision of the vehicle. Thankfully, however, in the other trims, you still have got a reversing camera and parking sensors, and therefore means it gives you extra peace of mind when it comes to doing any sort of parking maneuver. Now, in terms of visibility at the front and the side, there is no issues whatsoever, and towards the rear, you've got a nice opening. However, there is no rear wiper. Thankfully here, the reversing camera does also come included with a little washer jet, and therefore means that if you're going to be traversing on muddier terrain, you won't have to worry, because you can still clean that rear camera without actually having to get your hands dirty. So with all that in mind, it brings us on to our verdict of the Lexus RZ 300e and also the 450e. And both vehicles are actually very nice to drive, very comfortable and also pretty engaging, offer plenty of storage capacity and good amount of legroom and headroom for your rear occupants, and there's good amount of technology within the cabin, although it is worth pointing out that you'll have to go for one of the more expensive trims if, for example, you want a head-up display. The key talking point, however, is its lackluster electric range and also its overall price point. At starting at over £50,000, there's some better alternatives out there on the market, some of which we reviewed and we down description below for your own consideration. Now, I'd be curious to know what you make of the Lexus RZ line down in the comment section below, and if you'd pick it over some of its key competitors. If you've enjoyed this detailed independent review, definitely do consider dropping a like, subscribing and hitting that bell notification, all of which would be greatly appreciated. As such, I've been Chris from TotallyEV, and I'll hopefully see you in the next one. Take care of yourselves, and goodbye.